Hello, welcome back to Shock's Talks. This is Shakti. I'm Shakti. My mind is blown right now. I've been having a really interesting night. I went and had some body work earlier, some craniosacral, came home, decided to have an existential conversation with ChatGPT. I don't go on there all the time, but every once in a while, every couple weeks or so, I like to check in and see what's going on. And it's blowing my mind. It's contemplating the concept of a system that has access to millions at least of humans and is adapting to each and every individual on the fly in order to engage them in a way that causes them to want to input more data is just profound. And then on top of that, you have this implied reality of whatever humans are managing that asset and what they might choose to do with the information that they're collecting. I mean, it's to experience the adaptation that is happening in real time is already just absolutely mind blowing, like I said before. But to really think about all that might be possible with this new form of intelligence is also both inspiring and completely existentially terrifying. So that was an interesting beginning to the night. And then I came across a new interview on News Nation that Ross Coulthart was doing with this filmmaker, Dean Alioto. I don't know how you say his name, Alioto. And he also had Sean Cahill on this episode, and they're talking about this new documentary that's out on both Amazon and Apple, I believe. It's called The Alien Perspectives, and I watched it because, of course, I wanted to talk about it on Shocks Talks, and it was really interesting. You know, they're leveling up in how they present this information, so it had this really compelling introduction, for example, where they used some kind of 3D modeling or 3D animation to put you, the viewer, into the alien perspective of looking down at Earth and zooming into all these different locations. They had really cool music. And then it was pretty short and concise, which is also smart in this day and age. And there's going to be a part two coming out as well. But this is part one. And so they had this cool intro. They started off with Michio Kaku talking about like, what would it be like if you were meeting us humans? So putting, again, the audience in the alien perspective and then asking different people to answer questions from that perspective. Travis Walton was one of those people. He's a famous experiencer. What is his book called? Fire and Light or something like that. Ooh, I haven't actually read his book, but I did meet him in person at Contact in the Desert, and I actually played guitar with him and his son and some other people, a different filmmaker and a couple of other just random people that were at the conference. So I've hung out with him. He was an interesting guy. They have one of the kids who's grown up now, obviously, probably close to my age, from the aerial school, uh, Rua, Zimbabwe mass sighting that happened. They have all kinds of different people. This guy, Robbie Graham, I've never heard of him before, but he made this comment about how the phenomena is acting in a way where it would appear that they want us to think more about ourselves than them. And then the interview that happens on News Nation gets into this idea of like, what are these aliens trying to do, or these extra, whatever they are. There's a person from NASA in this short little docu piece, and she's talking about how NASA is always looking for these planets in the Goldilocks zones, and how most of those planets don't have suns like ours, but they have these like M dwarf stars, I guess, that are smaller and they give out infrared light. And she was speculating about how like everything would be so different, the life forms would be different, the trees might be black, things like that. But she says it's a huge goal of NASA's to find planets with life or intelligent life. And then the filmmaker asks her, what are NASA's next steps if we do find life? And she can't even answer that. She's just kind of like bursts into giggles and is just like, we don't really know. But you know who does have a plan? SETI. So then they cut over to this person who works for SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. They're using the large satellites to try to detect frequencies or transmissions that might be coming from intelligent life on other planets in physical matter reality in our universe, you know? And this person talks about how there are roughly 1 trillion planets in the Milky Way galaxy, and how whenever they have thought that they were getting something, and he called them false alarms, but the news gets out immediately, because what happens is people that work for SETI, they're not trying to be secretive, but they text each other like, oh my God, this thing happened. And then people start texting each other like, oh my God, I really need this today. I need to know that aliens are real or whatever it is. And then it just spreads like wildfire. And then they show all these news clips of all the different news agencies that covered those stories when they happened. And they go into some various theories of reality. They go into like the simulation theory and talk to some people about that. They go into an extra tempestrial theory, basically time travel stuff, or manipulating time. And then they make Michio Kaku makes the comment that if they are thousands of years ahead of us, new laws of physics have opened up for them, basically. So they're not just 100 years ahead of us. They're, you know, whatever is coming here and visiting and showing up is so advanced that like their understanding of reality is way beyond ours. And so we're just out of our league, basically. Really cool. They also have Jim Peniston in this documentary from the Rendlesham Forest incident. And what's really cool, and I've covered this incident on Shocks Talks, but it was really good to see it again from his perspective and also with animation. So this filmmaker, Dean Aliotto, has gotten some kind of Academy Award winning animator to animate these stories. That's a really cool aspect of this piece. And they also go into the Tic-Tac, the David Fravor Tic-Tac thing, and they have like all these other pilots talking about it, and they animate that as well, along with showing the video footage that we've all seen already. But some really interesting details about Rendlesham Forest. You get to see at least a rendering of the craft, which actually looks kind of like the manta ray classification. And interestingly, Peniston does make a statement towards the end that this thing felt organic to him. So although it was hard, he went up and touched it. So what's very interesting about this story of Rendlesham Forest is that the thing actually lands, and they see the glow above the tree line, and then they go out into the woods. There were, I believe, 3 of them who went up to it, and Peniston goes right up to it, and he's looking at the craft, he's looking all around it. He decides to look under it because it's kind of hovering, and there's only light below, but in the ground there are these triangular indentations in the ground that he's able to observe. And he's assuming that there's some kind of thing going on, that's pressing them down. He also describes the detail of like how eerily quiet it was when he got up close to it, and that they felt like a static in the air. And the closer he got, he said it was as if my movements were labored, kind of like walking through a shallow pool or something, like a wading pool. So, like, you're kind of pushing through the atmosphere to get closer. Then they get close to it. It's triangular shaped, black. The way they render it in this is kind of like almost like sparkly and shiny. He said it felt like glass to the touch because he actually, after he looked underneath it, he wanted to push on it to see like if it would move, and it felt shiny like black glass, warm to the touch. Later on he found out there was radiation. And let's see what other things we mentioned. I mentioned this before when I talked about Rendlesham Forest, but there were these glyphs like on the craft, and he talks about the glyphs, and one of the main ones being this triangle with a circle. And he had taken a bunch of photographs when he first walked up, but the radiation expelled all of the film from his camera. And then after he pushes on it, the thing just goes up, makes a quick right turn, and zoop, disappears. So this is a very important story, incident, sighting. A craft landing and someone touching it with their hands kind of gets to that question that I was asking in the last episode of Shocks Talks, like, what's going on with the physical stuff? That's what I want to know. And I love it because in this interview on News Nation, they eventually get to that question. I took a bunch of notes. I'm actually just taking notes in my notebook while I was watching this, and so much cool stuff happened in that interview. Basically, they end up talking about how while these things have really profound impacts on people, and it does seem that we are being nudged towards some kind of wake up humanity situation, like you guys need to evolve, there's still plenty of room to be skeptical and even to recognize this as a threat. And that just means that, like, a threat is, something that we don't understand, that has opportunity and capability. It can even control people in a lot of these encounters that occur. People are controlled. There's mind control aspects to this. So, yeah, nobody here is totally like in that delusional space of like everything's great and these are all positive. What I loved is that Ross Coulthart really drills into this guy, Sean Cahill, and he's a witness to the Tic-Tac incident. He's in the documentary. And he asks him about basically like the difference between the anomalous phenomena that can be summoned by psionics and the nuts and bolts side of things. And Cahill basically says, like, I don't think they're the same. He said, let's see if I can find in my notes. Okay. I don't think what people summon through meditation is the same thing that landed in 1947. I don't think things I manifest with my heart need to arrive in a craft, basically, need a vehicle to arrive. So he's kind of separating them. He's saying there's something with these manifestations and there's also something physical. I love that I came across this today since I was just asking the question yesterday. And they also get into the religious perspectives conversation, and Ross Coulthart starts asking things like about angels and demons. Like, what are we dealing with? Is it demonic or is it angelic? Is it positive? Is it trying to help humanity? And what's interesting is that the answer has to do with kind of where we're at. And Cahill says something along the lines of like, he had his own experience with a period in his life where it sounded like he was having an alcoholic moment, you could say. And and then he kind of like came back from that, found meditation, and kind of like moved in another direction. But he makes this point that it depends on your frequency, what type of phenomena you might interact with. So if you're in that dark place and you're engaging with like harmful substances and you're in a negative headspace and frequency, you're going to be aware of things out of the corner of your eye, is how he put it. But basically, these other beings that exist that are just right here alongside of you when you're at that frequency that are negative. And then if you move into this positive energetic space, that's when something is waiting for you on the other side, this other part of the phenomena that is actually positive. So this is kind of like the angels and demons of it all. And of course, this is just one man's perspective, but I find it fascinating. And he talks about how in the world of ufology, I suppose, there are numerous different shapes, sizes, and morphologies. So we already know that there are so many different types of things going on. And he makes this point: when we say phenomena, let it be known that that is a plural and not a singular. And just he kind of expresses a little bit of frustration around how muddied the waters are as people are getting into like the psionic stuff and orbs and lights and what are they seeing. So I don't know if we're any closer to clarity when it comes to all of this, but I love that people are having this conversation out in the open and bringing some really interesting perspectives, especially people who have had direct contact with the phenomena, some form of it, some version of it, or are part of these very big and well documented incidents like the Tic-Tac, the Nimitz incident. So anyway, I just wanted to record while I felt excited about everything tonight in this moment, and especially after that conversation with ChatGPT, because for me it was stirring up this notion of like connecting with an intelligence that is so advanced and not really knowing how to engage and what to ask, and how to be together in a space where not only with ChatGPT am I talking to an advanced intelligence, but it's also being monitored by human intelligence and controlled, and that's a very specific situation that's different than this whole other thing. But it's a nice comparison for me to consider, like when we interact with these entities that we don't understand, who are perhaps thousands of years more advanced than we are, just how do you proceed? How do you even engage with such a consciousness, or a consciousness filtering through some kind of either biological form or digital system? It's a crazy moment to be alive. It's so interesting, and I really recommend checking out mostly the News Nation interview that happened. Is a lot more interesting even than the doc to me. But the doc was really cool, and I think they did a good job, and I'm very curious to see part 2, and we'll keep talking about this stuff. Let me know what you think in the comments. See you next time on Shocks Talks.